Hello, Paragons, and welcome to this little extra bonus parallel guide. Let's talk about universal decks. So by now, if you've seen some of our other guides, the Earthen, the Cathari, the Shroud, the Augencore, the Marco, you've seen pretty much what the meta has to offer. You've seen pretty much a large variety of decks. So you might be wondering, Flux, what are you doing? Why are you in the bottom left corner? What is this deck list in front of you? What are we looking at? So basically, in parallel, there's a sixth sort of secret bonus parallel, and it's the universal parallel. So there isn't a specific paragon for playing universal decks, but there are certain cards that only have an impact if they're in a universal only deck. So these cards in particular are right above my head, Freydis and Ingrid. And so what Freydis is, just to show the first one, is if your starting deck contains only universal cards, for each universal card you have on the field, choose one of these 5 effects, and you can only choose it once, so you get up to 5 effects. It's an 8 mana card, and so it can draw you 4 cards, it can deal 4 damage to any target, it can give a target unit +4/+4, it can gain 4 health, and it can play a unit with energy cost 4 or less from your waste. So all of these together is a very, very powerful, like, full tempo swing on the board, giving you value, giving you momentum on the board, shutting down their stuff. It's a huge, powerful card. And then likewise, Ingrid is the other one of these 2 payoff cards. These 2 cards informally known as the Ladies. And so Ingrid is a 5/6 for 8, and likewise, if your starting deck contains only universal cards, for each universal card you have on the field, choose one of these. The enemy discards 2 cards. The enemy, you gain control of target enemy unit with equal or less attack to this unit, so 5 or less based on the starting stats. Create and play a copy of the last unit you played other than Ingrid, and create and add 2 random universal units to your hand other than Ingrid. So for this one, the gaining control of target enemy unit with equal or less attack than this, that's the really strong one, because the unit you gain control of can immediately attack. That's just really, really strong. And so Ingrid and Freydis, they only activate if you started your deck with nothing but universal cards. And of course, and you already know this if you watched this far, but in case you didn't, universal cards, of course, are the cards that are shared among all decks. They're not specific to one parallel. So when you only use those, and then you have these payoff cards, Freydis and Ingrid, you can actually build something quite powerful. Now, back in the day, this was considered very strong, and then they did nerf some cards for this deck. These actually used to be stronger than they are now, the Ladies. But the reason that this deck is getting played again is because of a new card called the Hacker. The Hacker, simple enough, when you play it, it swaps the cost of all the units in your deck at random. And so the way people are using this is that they're using the Hacker to make Freydis and Ingrid, to make the Ladies cheaper to play. So you can play a Freydis or an Ingrid for 4 mana, 3 mana, potentially 1 single mana. And so when you can play these incredibly powerful cards at a discounted cost, that's enough to be a big win condition. And these decks can just win off of these huge discounted Ingrid and Freydis turns, which is made possible by the Hacker. And likewise, ramping out the Hacker using the take it or leave it. And so you have this whole gameplay that's kind of worked out. Now, if you're newer to Parallel, if you haven't seen this yet, you might be wondering, okay, Flux, like, what Paragon am I using? And the answer is the Juggernaut Workshop. You can see a more in-depth discussion of this card on the Augencore guide, but in case you're not familiar, you start the game with 4 counters. At the end of each turn, you lose a counter, and every time the counters go to 0, you can summon a powerful Juggernaut token, one of 3 different cards, which is either a 3/6 defender, a 4/4 armed, or a 2/5 that does 2 damage to something when you play it. And so you're basically getting the Juggernaut value off of your Paragon, and otherwise just using universal cards for the universal strategy. In the past, we have seen universal decks run with old Neas, the Cathari Paragon, but unfortunately, Neas has been nerfed, so that's no longer a thing as of right now. But notably, competitive tournament player Perp did bring Universal Neus to the finals of the first major in Season 1, which was pretty exciting to see back when that happened. I remember watching that live. And we've also seen people dabble with Universal Earthen, especially Shoshana. But for the most part, Workshop is by far the most popular and strongest, most successful Uni deck. So with that said, let's go through. I already explained the very basic idea of using the hacker to reset your unit costs and try to get a cheap Ingrid, a cheap Freitas. But let's talk about more of the key cards and how they really play into this deck's playstyle. So let's talk about Drone Printer. Drone Printer is very, very good for Uni decks. It's a 3-mana relic, and it says the first time a token is created on your turn, draw a card. And then also it has 2 activated abilities. One is just spend 2 energy, create a 1/1 token, and the other one is to spend 5 energy and destroy this relic to create a 6/6 token. And so most of the time what you're doing with Drone Printer is spending 2 energy to create a token and just get that 1/1. And later in the game, if you and your opponent get into a battle of attrition where you're both playing a long battle game, a long value game rather, being able to make endless 1/1 tokens with 10 energy, it's 5 1/1s a turn. That's actually a lot of value. And in long drawn out games, that makes a huge difference, especially against Shroud decks. They basically need to use Eclipsed Fate to remove all of your Drone Printers at once, because otherwise this is one of your best ways to shut down Shroud decks in the long game by overwhelming them with drones. So even if they use Demolecularize or other board clear type stuff, you're just refilling the board. No value issue, never running out of cards. But it's also good, of course, for the card draw, because with this deck, you're going to play the hacker, you're going to shuffle the cost of your units, and then you need to draw a lot of cards and get to your good stuff. So the card draw here, also a big factor. And another card that's going to give you a bunch of draw, you've seen it in quite a few of these beginner guides now, and that's Rummaging Researcher. The 3 energy, 2 attack, 5 health unit. Universal, of course, because in this deck it has to be. And the muster is that if you charge 2, reveal 2 cards from your bank, you may do that, and then whenever you reveal a bank card, including for that muster, you may draw a card. So stumbling a little bit over my words there. Basically, whenever this unit's on the board, whenever anyone charges or reveals a bank card, you get to draw. And so you're going to use this not only for the good stat line at 3, but also just for that continuous source of draw. And this, along with another card that also charges called High End Help, can result in a lot of draw, which you're going to want. You've also got the Armored Vehicle, so lots of ways that you can charge. And we've also got 1 copy of Allocated Provisions in this particular list, which lets you flip the charged cards back over, get some caches, and make sure you don't run out of charge material, because once your cards are flipped, they can't be charged again unless you conceal them. So I did toss in 1 Provisions. Otherwise, this is mostly a list by Diesel from Paragon. Shoutouts Diesel. And yeah, so you're going to see a lot of Rummaging Researcher value. Speaking a little more about the early game, the AZ-12 is your best 1-drop if you're going first when you're on the play. This, if you're new to the game, you might underestimate this, but once you see it for a while, you'll realize it's actually very, very powerful. At the start of your turn, target a unit. Damage dealt to that unit is increased by 1 this turn, so it's a 0/3. That 3 health makes it really sticky, and it's just great synergy with your PS8s and with your gunslingers for those early game removal options, as well as just early game combat. If you have a 1/2 and you're attacking your opponent who has a 1/2, the Painter gives you that value trade as opposed to both units living. There is a lot of stuff like that can happen with the Painter, so seriously, don't underestimate it. We already discussed the hacker. Again, you're basically hard mulliganing for this card when you run this deck, because you need to play this early to give you a chance to get those cheap ladies out on the board. Just really reiterating that. And we went over the ladies, but again, Freitas and Ingrid, we already read through them. Just familiarize yourself with these cards if you're either playing with or against Uni decks, even a little bit. Booty, what's up, brother? Welcome in. The fat fingers on the keyboard, multiple typos. That's okay, bro. That's okay. Welcome in. Yeah, so just really, really familiarize yourself with these cards, with Ingrid and with Freitas. if you're going to be anywhere near uni decks. Oops. And then a couple other cards to look at. This is a shorter guide since we just have to go over one deck. We don't have to go over like 3 different paragons like most of these parallel guides, these beginner ones. But I really did feel like the uni deck deserved to be covered. You're going to see this and you need to know what's going on. So no snitching, another early game card, because your biggest risk with this deck is running out of is getting out tempoed, rather, like if they can just go wide in the early game and you can't answer their units. And so one thing that's really helpful is no snitching. If your opponent has an early game unit which is threatening to get a lot of value and snowball, examples could be like Cathari's Standard Bearer or Asian Subjugate, or maybe it's a Markolian with a Bannerman, maybe it's an Earthen player rocking a Steward of the Garden, any of these things. No snitching is a great way for 0 energy just to immediately shut down an effect that is threatening to snowball, to build too much value. So you're going to be surprised at how powerful this is. If you haven't already seen it, keep running no snitching. Don't doubt it. And the other one is take it or leave it. This is our coin style card. 0 cost, gain 1 energy this turn. So you're going to use this to play the hacker sooner. If you have like a coin plus hacker, you can play hacker on 3. You're going to want to do that most of the time. The hacker is also 3 attack, 5 health. So when you coin it out, it's actually a good stat line. Like the body of the unit is relevant there. And then if you do have a bad draw, if you can't play the hacker, you just don't get your hackers in the early game, you can also use your coins, your take it or leave it's, just to cast Ingrid or Freitas early, so you could play it on turn 6 or turn 7, even if it doesn't get discounted by the hacker. So the coin, the take it or leave it, Tioli, as we like to call it sometimes, it is actually quite effective in this deck. It's one of these cards we've been learning over time, ever since they got the final design worked out, when they added this little text that the card can't be banked. Like, okay, where does it make sense and where is it like a little bit too restrictive? Uni decks, it makes a lot of sense. So you're really going to want to run this, and this is going to be a big part of your strategy. And that's basically it, man. That's the basic uni deck. I hope that was a good explanation for y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you missed the other guides, go check them out. We got a beginner's guide for all 5 parallels, upgraded for Aftermath. So get your learning on, and I'll see you guys on the battlefield. That does it for this video. Flux signing out.